Hello, everybody. Welcome to our town hall. Today we have a very special uh, invite to you for giving the attention to our last feedback, or at least the latest feedback that we got from the community about the round 4. But it's important also, and Ubio will talk a bit about this with you all soon. But we are initiating a process where we want to get some candidates for new circles, right? More specifically, we are intending to develop the data analytics or data analysis circle, which will take care and do the analysis around voting, also around the data that we collect from the rounds, uh, always with the same idea and interest in improving for the next rounds, right? But of course, we are not talking only about data that are going to be generated from the rounds, also from our operations and our daily basis activities, like town halls, for instance. We might be having some insights from data that we can generate and create more of this friendly environment and bring in more people and even further quality in the topics and content that we discuss here. Just one of the many use cases that we can see here, the possibilities. Okay, and yeah, it's been a very good moment. We are managing to work through a lot of, at least discussing a lot of challenges that we have and also had, and it's a very important step, this feedback that the community and all of you are participating, because this is generating a lot of talks within the community, also internally in Deep Funding. So I am very, very glad that we pushed forums, town halls, and etc. for having your perception. What we are going to do today is mostly to try to concatenate everything that we discussed, that we talked, and the feedbacks, because it's not only one moment, right? Oh, the day after the results are released, we get a form sent to you, give 2, 3, 1 week, and then we have it at dawn. No, we wanted to do this in a phased approach where many of you could contribute, and with the specifics as well, where each of community members participated into this process. Okay, so okay, now good. We have about 14 people into the call. Thank you very much for you that joined us after. We really appreciate your participation here and contributions. Okay, and as we discussed at the beginning, we would love to see your faces as well. If you feel comfortable with, please open your camera. I promise I'm not going to take a print screen here and a snapshot, even though the meeting is being recorded for later YouTube submission. Okay, thank you very much. Yes, Jan, would you like to add some points or any point about deep funding or what you are developing?
Actually, no, I have nothing to add. I mean, there are 1,000 ideas, almost literally, that we already have to improve deep funding. But this is not my time to talk about ideas. This is all your time to talk about them. And it's my turn to listen for a change.
Okay, sounds great. Sounds great. Okay, adding more people here. Yeah, so without further delongance, Ubio, please. Uh, Thank you very much for contributing here and participating with this feedback, and also for pushing the forms, even with more than only the English language, right? That was really
Yeah.
innovation that we were able to bring. Even though it's a simple one, it's a very important one that we want to make more times and improve it. Okay, thank you very much. The floor is yours.
All right, everyone. Yeah, good morning, afternoon, evening, night, wherever you're joining the call from. And yeah, so I think this is how this call will be today. I would love it to still be much more of a conversation. As such, I would be sharing the link to the feedback that we've gathered so far from the community, and you're free to read those feedback, anyone that resonates with you. After I've been able to share the general perspective of what I did see, you are free to as well share your opinion, whatever was not captured there, whatever you saw there that you think needs to be reinforced, and something you feel quite strongly about, then as well, you're very free to do that. So a couple of minutes, let me go get the response link and share it with everyone. So it's not a closed stuff. This is more of an open conversation we're going to be having today. And so, yeah, so let me do that in 1 minute. Everyone can go there as well. Let's see. Yeah, please, Ian, is it open to everyone? Because, okay. Okay, so I just want to be sure. So let's click on the link. I'll be sharing my screen as well, and then we're going to be going through what did I see, what did we notice, and all those the whole conversation around that, right? So yeah,
I have here the form, right? It's not the spreadsheet with the
yeah, so I'm trying, what I shared here should take us directly to the response, right? This particular link in the chat room should take us directly to, so maybe let's try that and see if that works.
yeah, it's the for me.
Okay, Rafael, please, can you share the sharing rights with me as well? So while we waiting for Rafael to give us the right, yeah. So basically, this is more like an open conversation. We took an anonymous process whereby we opened the form to the community for the community to actually give feedback on what they think or should. So we asked basically 3 questions. What did you like about the process? And I'll be sharing what I saw a lot of people liked about the process. What did you like about the process? What should we stop doing? And what should we start doing, right? So those were the 3 basic questions that we had. Anyway, before we start giving feedback on all of this, I would like to remind us that this is just a sample size, or yeah, so if we are having just 12 response, we cannot say that this is representative of the community. As such, we would not make deductive analysis. We cannot say 30% of the community truly thinks this, even if we found 3 to 4 responses that actually seem alike in a particular way. We cannot say 30 to 40% of the community feels this way, because this data is not representative. Second is we took some feedback in Portuguese and Spanish. I'm sorry, I'm yet to. So I was expecting. I was trying to see how I can collaborate with Guillermo to help me on that. So that feedback as well has not been integrated into some of the analysis we'll be discussing today, and my opinion as well. So just to put in those contexts around, and also to remind us that at a point I'll be sharing. I took the data as well and tried to play around by creating some level of visualizations and analysis and all of that. It's just basic. So this is just me rambling through and yeah, trying to see what I can get out of that. So maybe someone else can take the same data and find out something quite different. It's going to be fascinating to also see what you're going to discover. But I will show you my own process, how I did mine, the graph and everything that I was able to gather from that. So part of the process, sorry, I'm trying to set the background to the discussion. Part of the process, we ensured that we did not put in, we made it an open-ended questions. We did not try to make it deterministic by trying to let you, did you like the process, and give you something to scale. We realized that by doing that, we are already putting words into your mouth. But by making it an open conversation, we allow you to feel free to pour out whatever you feel or felt about the process. And so that was what all of this was about. So yeah, let me see if I can share the screen now. Yes, I can. All right. So, and other people, I've shared the link. Can I get the feedback if every other person can as well see that?
I can see the responses.
Okay. What about others, please?
I can see it as well.
All right, beautiful, beautiful. So when we talked about what should we continue doing, the context here was about what was it that you really liked about the whole process. And so we got a lot of responses. And then 2 to 3 things seemed to be like what people really enjoyed most from the process. I realized that a lot of people talked about the portal. So I would say this is kudos to the developer team and the whole team behind the process. You guys did phenomenal. We had a lot of response of people talking about the portal. So maybe let's try to see if I can pick point one. So somebody talking about here the simplicity of the portal. Yeah. So another person talking about the anonymity of the voting, a bit engaging. Yeah, so if you go down, the quality of proposal and the new features on the DF website. Yeah, so this were the comment system, the review system, the whole reputation system. These were a lot of features that actually came into the process in round 4. So we can see that a lot of people, I wanted to say community, but yeah, I'm still trying to remind myself, hey, it wasn't up to 2, it was just 12 persons, right? But I'm trying to say that there was, compared to idea scale, I think there is a positive signal from the community with respect to the tooling. People are much more appreciating of the fact that we have a tool that is actually enabling us to be able to do a lot of stuff. Then the next thing that I realized that people really loved about the whole process was the global, which was again something I didn't really expect to see, but the fact that there is a global perspective to this DF. So you see people talking about DF is growing, people are coming in, and all of that. So it's surprising to realize that a lot of people actually do appreciate the growth as being something positive, and the increase in number as being something that is not necessarily negative, right? So people enjoyed the seeing the fact that, oh, we were actually 1 yesterday, and then now we are 5, and then now we are 100, now we are 250. The community actually enjoyed that, and some people saw that as a positive stuff, the fact that they can collaborate with people from other communities and global space. So there was a lot of discussions around this whole stuff. Yeah, DF is growing geometrically, and it takes iterations to improve the process. So you can see, so for every time people, the marketing is improving rapidly and all of that. These conversations were necessarily conversations that spoke to the global collaboration, that all of these, look at it here, many people from the world joined in, so many proposals. So all of these conversations, if you look at it on a thematic base, was about the global orientation of deep funding, the growth that it has, the exponential growth that it has experienced in the past in the past years, and how all of this is effective. Then the third theme that I also saw, I tried to take the themes in 3, right? So not that there were no other stuff. So like I said, we've made it open, so you can actually go in and make your own deductions from what from that, right? It's not like a this thing. So the next thing that we saw there is yeah, it's the staff, right? People talk about the people behind the team. So at some point, I think someone even clearly called out, yeah, the enthusiasm and fairness of Jan, Rafael, Mayor DeFi is great. The proposals are more even in terms of word count and all of that. So people recognize the people were appreciating of the people behind the scene and the amount of effort they are putting into to ensure that this is so. My deduction about this is that the theory of circles, the way we are processing it, could be something that is very helpful, and it's probably building a community out of this, and it's helping us to be able to achieve more. So one of that was the fact that people enjoyed the people behind the process. So I just read one of the comments here. We can see another comment there. The entire process was clearly communicated, and at any point an issue was raised among the community members, careful considerations was given and adjustments were made. I love to see Jan and Rafael bring themselves closer to the community and respond to the concerns promptly. I would like to see that continue. So what all of this is, I could theme all of this into was people, right? The people aspect of this whole process, right? Which obviously sometimes is what gets skipped, right? And I'm so happy to realize that the community or people in the community do realize that and do appreciate that, right? So kudos to all the people that were working behind the scene. You made the process awesome, and this is what a lot of people are talking about. Okay, so what should we stop doing? Now I'm going to check this using one of the analysis I did. So permit me, I think I want to show the graph of something I did because I think it's very obvious and I want to see this. Can you see my screen? I've changed my tab.
Yes, it changed as well.
So you can see the new tab, right? Beautiful.
Yes.
All right. So I did a little bit of some analysis. I picked the keyword. So sorry, I'm not going to rack us here for those of us that are not this thing. So one of the things I did was to check for the word cloud of this year. Beautiful. So the word cloud was very, very emphatic because the correlation between what I saw in the negative stuff and when I did a word cloud of all the discussions that we had in the process, I fed my model with all of that data. This was awesome. It brought out all the issues that people were having even clearly. So the key one that people were talking about a lot was the expert review, right? And this is like the key stuff here in my word cloud, right? So I took everything that we did and then we put it inside the word cloud. And the first thing that we could pick out of it was actually the expert review. So let's go back to yeah, I'll still get back here, but we're going to be probably switching tabs. So let's see so what should we stop doing and what should we okay, so what should we stop doing and what should we start doing, right? I tried to see, but most of them were mostly in the negative, but few of them, especially in the start doing, were more like recommendations, but you can as well push it towards the positive side of the bar. So let's look at it, right? People can use phony accounts to drop bad comments and reviews, expert review, right? We need to improve expert reviews. So I don't know if I can do that, or I can read everything, but I'm just trying to say how repetitive the conversations on experts was, right? So we had the issue of we need to improve expert reviews. I say this because expert reviews can be, and there's another one, expert reviews can have a lot of weight into people's decision. Yeah, so yeah, the expert review emails didn't say which projects were qualified in one-to-one communications. The MISC pool was difficult to conceptualize. This is another person talking about there. So expert and community reviews appear not to be factored in. The results seem more like strategic voting and not community sentiment based on pre-vote reviews and ratings. So, well, do I totally agree with this? Because, okay, it's an opinion. I'm not meant to have an opinion on that, right? Because I was trying to say that based on the analysis, only 30% of the expert reviews turned out to be in. So would we be saying this is absolutely true? But people, the fundamental of this whole conversation is not about what is true and what is wrong. It's about what do people feel, right? So it's about the fact that people feel that the whole expert review process is not the best. And there's a whole lot of, yeah, this is it. Yeah, this is another review here. Somebody said, expert reviews, these are biased as community reviews that some of you all don't like or value. So this is still talking about the whole expert review, right? So there's a big question about the people were not comfortable, or most people were not comfortable either with the process of how the expert review was being done, or the very concept of expert review in itself, or different aspect of it, or the result of the expert reviews and all of that. It begs the question, should expert reviews be stopped? This is one of such conversations that I feel moving forward to the DFR5, sorry, that the community, the people that will have to be creating that whole system for us, the work group, have to try to answer this core question, right? Because do we need to stop it? Is there a way to better shape it? So we need to have a community discussion on this, and I hope all of us in the community would be able to weigh in our opinion and have our conversation and have this conversation clearly spelled out. The second issue, right, was the issue of transparency. And so people were not, so yeah, let's read one, right? The process lacks transparency. Also, there are no clear and fair process to be followed. Teams seem to be improving as they go. There needs to be a clear way where cumulative individual reviews decide which proposals are better and all of that. So there were questions on transparency, both in terms of the expert review, in terms of the voting, in terms of the outcomes, the weight, yeah, and all of it. Okay, let's see a little bit more. I don't like the fact that individuals, voters, can't know exactly their voting power. This is still issue of transparency, right? So people are like, why, if I'm going to be voting in a particular process, how come that I do not know my voting power and how all of this is? So issue of transparency. There's someone here clearly spoke that transparency and community oversight should be increased. Even though I am a beneficiary of this round, I so much like the transparency that we are currently fighting for in the project Catalyst right now. So this person actually got, and you know, when we do analysis, people that actually got in, when they give a negative review, is always taken extremely seriously, right? So if someone that is that got voted in still feel that, to me, I'm reading this person, to me, this might later cause a lack of transparency and community oversight as time goes on. Even if it is private to individual community member, everyone should have known their respective voting power before the voting starts at all. Transparency and community voting oversight should be increased, even though, so this is the person having this communication, right? Transparency. I worry about wells associated with DF and established projects voting for their pet projects and launching those to the top without knowing if they upvoted or downvoted my project based on merit. Do we really need an AI music algo and all that? I don't think we should go into specifics, right? That's not the essence. So, so this is another person. I don't think the round 3 algorithm works dependably. Has it been tested for this volume of proposals? And how are projects not voted on are rated? How are projects not voted on are rated? Okay, but we can get the idea behind that, right? The person is questioning the algorithm, and did it actually work? How do we say that it did work? The process has transparency, but it is also really opaque. Votes are shared in the spreadsheet, but it's not communicated how many voted high or low, or if up/down votes are related to location. The communities within DF vote fairly strategically with or counter to their public community ratings. Without this information, the fairness can be critiqued and strategy can be evaluated for the next rounds. Still, the issues of transparency. The technical team seem to have a bias against cultural and humanitarian projects, favoring scientific and technical projects that appear to be more in the wheelhouse. These teams, perhaps they are from Kadanu, seems like they have more means to exert influence during voting than teams that are built around humanitarian projects. Okay, so I may not be able to go all, but the idea of transparency was very, very key. So let's check our graph again and see what we've got there. So we saw bias. I'm trying to look at bias as related to the review, but there was also, people felt that there was bias, not only in the review, but also as well in other process. So we can see the issue of bias over there. And review, right? The whole review system needs to be worked on. And then, yeah, and then smaller issues that came up as well from there were issues of voting and proposals, right? So these are issues that we need to look into, right? So yeah, we can as well make this observation public if we want that, right? On the frequency, words that had more frequency on the positive comments. So we can see words like town halls was repeated so many times. Words like comment and review systems were, so people, so this now I'm talking on the positive comments, right? The frequency, people felt like the town halls were effective, they were helpful. Oh, I forgot to mention, I saw a couple of conversations on the town hall that was held for the spotlight. I think people really love that. And yeah, so that speaks again to the town hall. So I'm just going based on frequency now. So we can see town halls having a lot of frequency. We see comment and review system being something that a lot of people talked about. So platform and process improvement, like I said, that's still on the this thing. And then idea first and proposal videos, right? So if we dig deeper into this form that we've shared, we are going to go into much more details, and I don't really want to go into that because we had people under the tooling, people were talking about things like they should be able to embed images and videos into their proposals to make it easier, right, and better. So a lot of a lot of consensus on that, and a lot of opinion on that, or some level of opinion from that okay, we are going to be, so there was a separation. Yeah, we're going to have spotlight days where we're going to be able to put our pitch, but people should be able to put their demos and their screenshots of whatever they've built inside the very portal or tooling that they are doing. So this is another recommendation for, I think that came up as well under what should be recommendations and all that. So this is a recommendation for the working group for DFR5 that people feel they should be able to embed that, and again for our developer team. On the negative word, again, the word frequency, we see expert reviews having the highest amount of critique, and then X bias in reviews as well, having this, right? So there's people felt like there was a lot of bias. So we can see expert review having a lot more concern as compared to every other negative stuff that we had here in terms of the frequency of the conversation, right? So so for improvement, yeah, these are the stuff that may be important to the community, especially the developers that will be working on this. Video proposals and ideation first and all that. Yeah, I talked about the embedding function, rating system, linked funding mechanism, cooperative funding mechanism, review circle participation, how all these circle, how they participate in process, timely rewards. Yeah, I think I can recall someone making a conversation on timely rewards, like especially for the reviewers and all that. So proposal limits, subpools for proposals. Yeah, and I think in Ken, when we're having conversation, I would like Ken to talk about this because we had the conversation as well on the Discord group. He talked about issues of subpools because he felt like the pools were not representative. So Ken, I would like to, and please, this is not only about Ken, every other person that probably have conversation or insights to throw into this, we should as well do once we're done with this. So which of this was like percentage distribution for the suggested improvement? For us, it was not any, there was not any much difference in terms of the suggestions. Most of it had equal this thing on representation on the importance of all of these based on what was being provided. So yeah, this is just a little graph that I had to just do to be able to capture the nuances of everything that was discussed in terms of the conversations that we had and the feedback that we got. So, but again, this is just to open up the conversation. I know a lot of these conversations. I know some people like sorry, Ken, that I had to call your name, but it's not about Ken only. There are a lot of people that I can personally call to that I've personally we've had this conversation either on Discord or somewhere where we have tried to put in our head together to see how different stuffs can be improved, right? So I think this is the right time for us to have those conversations. But this is just a summary from the feedback we got.
Oh, congratulations. Yeah. That was very in-depth and detailed.
Thank you. Thank you, Ken.
I have to say, Ubio, you have to borrow this, or at least lend me this model that you have there to applying all the feedbacks for us to have this amazing overview on things. Thank you very much for giving the effort and time to that, man. Really interesting,
Thank you.
really good.
Thank you.
Well, then we have now the feedback that from the community. As Ubio mentioned, it's just a small percentage of the community, but nevertheless, it's very important as well. I myself saw some points there that I can also make the same point. Some of those I disagree, but that's the way it should be, right? We have different points of view. And before we can perhaps jump in and in specifics here, I would like to give you a general framework, which is not settled in stone or written in stone at this point. That's why I'm bringing the topic here, which is what to do with that. You put your time and effort in answering, creating the forms, analyzing, assessing. The community comes and put their ideas and etc. in it. So how are we going to use this? This is meant, of course, for the next round, but also in a longer term for us to improve the Deep Funding program. And we are building a work group that's going to handle these topics that were raised, also topics that the team, the staff actually of Deep Funding detected, and all the conversations among circles and stakeholders in general. We are going to concatenate to bring all this information together. We are going to detect the main points, discuss around, and bring to the community. The idea now is to have these town halls as a point of contact for the community to give their inputs while we are working in these changes, potential changes that we are going to have for the round. So all of you are going to be able to contribute in a more direct way or indirect way by participating in the rounds. And by the end of this, of course, we can't attend or we can't agree with everyone because people have different points of views. But we are going to try to strive, and also sometimes we need to be more pragmatic, right? Sometimes we should have 10 steps before the vote happens. But then for having 10 steps and having better quality or whatever is the feature that we are willing to have, this is going to take too long. So this analysis has also from the side of the community and the stakeholders, the participants, to be considered. Sometimes we see some suggestions or critiques on it that goes in a direction that if it's done in that way, for instance, as I mentioned, more steps for qualifying proposals, we would have more time. And then next round, we would have people or members of the community perhaps complaining about the how long is. So 3, 4, 5 months in order to make this. So it's all about balance and trying to find the sweet spot in this process. And therefore, we really count on your support, attending town halls when the case, and contributing with this set of decisions and changes for the next round. Okay, Ken, please.
Okay, I'll start my video here and apologize for the lack of hair that's evolving on my head. And I might have to abscond quickly to join in battle with porch pirates. I'm expecting a delivery today. So the questions I have, I'm not a statistician, so I can't evaluate effectively what happens because there are so many projects if proposals are skipped over and not voted on. How do those weight? Do those weight towards 5, or are they not counted at all? It's my primary question.
Would you please repeat, Ken? Your audio is not perfect. Sorry about that. You are muted. You are muted.
Coordination. Okay, so there are many proposals and this grew so quickly. How are proposals that are skipped over in voting weighted in the evaluation? Do those get an automatic designation of maybe 5, or are they not counted in the calculations for voting so that we can better understand how to compete? Yeah.
Are we talking about expert reviews or the final calculation of voting?
Oh, the public voting, please.
The public voting. Okay, Jan, would you like to?
I was waiting, yeah. So I don't think there were those projects, Ken. I think every project was voted on. We have this rule, that 1% rule. If less than 1% of the voters, if a project is voted on by less than 1% of the voters, is the current algorithm, which can be improved, by the way, then it is not eligible, because that could create very extreme outcomes because due to just a few votes coming in. But every project was well above. So I think on average, every project got, not a lot of votes, because we didn't have that many voters, to be honest. That's definitely something we have to look into. But everyone was more or less average. There weren't that big changes, either upwards or downwards.
Interesting. Thank you.
Joanna also contributed with the equation of the voting, if you can, in the chat. Thank you, Joanna. Okay, anyone else would like to give the perception or perspective around the feedback that we had? The way, if you have additional feedback to give, also would be very valuable to us. Ken, did you raise your hand again?
I did, yeah.
Please,
my apology.
No.
Okay, so as far as I know, it's not possible to know generally how many people voted low, medium, or high for proposals. In my case, thinking about it afterwards, that might have been because I just had a 3-minute video and didn't really present myself as a human being or the team or just the volume of competition. And so many proposals were great. So I'm wondering if there would be any insight into what might spotlight shortcomings in the proposal. Did more people vote low or medium, or do more people vote high? Because I have to figure out how to compete with a growing pool. Thank you.
Yeah, as I was talking at the beginning of the meeting, we are setting this circle of data analysis exactly to bring this type of insights, right? So how important was for a proposal having their pitch uploaded and updated in their page. So this is exactly the type of information that we would love to have and bring to the community and say, hey, here is the data. If you are not participating in the Spotlight Day, you probably are not going to, and then give the statistics around, you have this chance of not being selected, and so on, so on, so on. About this particular topic, I am really, it's interesting because I heard a lot of people in other calls, internal calls, and etc., talking about this. We should enforce or having it as a requirement for teams to have their videos, 3-minute videos. If you don't have the video, you shouldn't go away. And why they are saying this? Mainly because it's way easier for you to watch a 3-minute video and cast your vote than go through proposal after proposal after proposal. So you would have, of course, it's still a lot of time, right? We had 210 proposals. Still, we would have 630 minutes that we would have to spend watching videos. But still, it's a different way of putting. But I am always also saying we should embrace those that don't have the background for such a criteria. So to oblige teams to do it would be probably detrimental to those teams that doesn't have the ability or skill to go in front of camera and speak. So it would make the opposite or the same when teams here didn't receive the expert recommendation, right? And I'm saying this because of the feedback, but sometimes the feedback is not aligned with what we saw. As we said, 27, 29, sorry if I am not exactly here, percent of the awarded proposals were also expert recommended. And this shows us a lot of things. Was indeed how much negative feedback we had for expert reviews, considering what Ubio brought. And it's more than half of the proposals that were selected didn't have the recommendation. Of course, this is a point of interest and to improvement on the other side, right? We have to improve the processes of expert reviewers, or even if members of the community are not interested, discuss why not, if we should keep the expert review process. I believe it's necessary. It's a very good step into quality and how we can make a more informed decision for the members that vote. So this is something that we should definitely, and I am willing to bring into this work group for discussion, round 5. Thank you, Ken, for your contributions.
Yeah, Ken, before you go off, I know you're about to, so I was trying to make sure you don't before we have the last conversation on this. What about what we were talking about, the issue of the subpools, right? So we're talking about it. I wish Ines is also here. She brought up some topics that I've also seen in the analysis. right? So some people do feel that the subpool is not representative, right? What do you have to say about that? And then what would be the way out of this? Like, how do we create, what kind of pooling do you think we need to create to be able to get that whole balance? And you brought that up as well.
Thank you. My perspective was that as the pool grows and there are more and many varied proposals, how does it affect how statistics will work out? And again, I'm not a statistician, but I think that does it become necessary to consider subpools, pools that are focused on technical or social good or culture, in order to provide an enclave for those projects to compete with each other instead of a cultural project competing with a technical project? And then how does that match up with the tendencies of past rounds to vote for one thing or another? I think over time it kind of averages out, but within the competitions itself, I wonder, as the number of proposals increase, do we need to consider subpools as a way to kind of mature the competition? Is that sort of organization preferable? So instead of having 72 projects that are competing all together.
There can be another argument that's a technical way of trying to put in. So if, for example, if we put in a subcategory for cultural projects, that's a subtle way of saying that we want to prefer, right? Because if we put in a category, a subcategory for culture, and then that's like 250,000 already going there, for example, are we not? So I'm not against that. I'm just trying to see how
counter argument.
That conversation in a deeper level, right? So are we not subtly bringing down the competition against other ideas and other quality ideas that may evolve, and then trying to put in a tactical preference towards certain kind of ideas? And again, if that were to be the case, is it necessarily wrong? And is it also in line in the spirit of deep funding? That's the first question. Then I think we also talked about, you also brought up the topic of new proposals having difficulty competing with existing projects or people that might have built social capital as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think these are very difficult things to try and balance, and certainly the mathematics of it are a bit beyond me. So I do operate from my own experience in terms of artist-run centers, how those pools are handled, and so on. And I think that as this pool grows for new projects, it'll become more and more difficult. What will the tendency be? Will it tend towards technical projects? Will it tend towards agricultural projects? We don't know. So on one hand, yes, I see the argument how it can perhaps artificially direct how proposals are evaluated and funded. But on the other hand, the overall mission of SingularityNET is beneficial AGI. So what are the components of beneficial AGI? Are those purely technical, which are required because it's a technical medium? But how does it become beneficial? How does it become inclusive in that regard? So do we begin to create these kind of islands? And will those islands work to help beneficial projects, in my opinion, propagate more successfully? In terms of established players, I'd like very much for my projects to become an established part of SingularityNET. But getting over the first hurdle to funding is an issue as well, because it's a question of how to articulate the value and the proposition and the science behind it within 3 minutes. And I can do one or two of those things, but the third thing might be more difficult. So do we begin to cultivate communities in a more direct way with these sub-projects or these sub-pools for proposals? I think it would be worth an experiment, or alternatively, having a regular periodic beta style proposal like we did for 4B, which is a smaller pool. That puts another weight of commitment on deep funding staff. So I'll stop talking there because I could go on. I've had a coffee already.
Oh, no problem. Thank you. So yeah, I think there was an opinion on that. I saw somebody put that, I think, in one of the comments. Someone talked about these beta rounds should continue. I think you're speaking to the importance of that as well, based on what that person did say. I think, yeah, I'm beginning to see light there. So yeah, every other person we can pop into the conversation. Yeah, it's just so the still on that conversation about having younger players, new players into the space. I do have one question, and I think we need to be very frank with ourselves in responding to this. Do we think it's fair, right, that we have new players who come into the system and are not going to be committed to the system getting funded as and against players that are coming into state? For example, right, if I see because I do know you, the truth is, right, when we bring in two ideas, right, I do know you can, and I know who you are, and I know what you stand for, I'm more likely to vote for your projects, right? And so, well, what you may call that systematic, right? But again, and say that that is playing against the new players. But here we are, we have new players who don't want to come into the town halls, who don't want to engage with the community, because the essence of the town hall was actually to solve the problem of new players that you're talking about, right? When you talk about new players and all of that, right? So we have new players in the community, people who want to propose, but these new people in the community, they don't want to form a community, and then without people knowing you, credibility most times is you before even your project or your ideas, right? So people come in and then they don't want to engage in town halls, they don't want to join communities. So do you think it's in quote, people are wrong not to vote their project in, even when they have very valid ideas, just because I don't even know them? So the truth is, I might, if maybe they will come into town halls, I get to know them, I would probably take a look at their proposals, right? But they don't come around. So I know you, and so at every time I see a proposal, I read it 2-3 times. But I would be frank with myself, 210 proposals, there were a lot of proposals, probably good proposals that I skipped. And do you think that's a negative thing, that we should now be creating a pool to massage the egos of these new people that are coming into the community but are not ready to engage with the community?
I guess an important ingredient to that, and see the argument you're making, and I appreciate your kind comments as well. I tend not to think about establish it within the community, but I'm also very grateful for it. So in terms of a new person, it's a time-based process, isn't it? In terms of they're developing a comfort level with participating in the community, with finding their voice, perhaps to speak to the community as well. So with 210 projects, it's difficult to go through each one of them in detail, for sure. So I can appreciate that. And on top of it, of course, because we live on a round planet, I may not see the participation in town halls from people who are on antipodal to my location, where they're in a different time zone and I can't see what they're describing and get to know them. So I guess the overall question is, how do we begin to manage complexity? And how do we begin to work with the high level or the increasing level of proposals, both behind the scenes with expert reviews, but also in front of the scenes? We had 3 minutes each to propose in this case. I elected to do a 3-minute video, which in retrospect might have been better as a 1.5-minute video presenting ourselves personally. But that being said, on voting day, does everyone vote on every single proposal just based on summary and based on knowing the person and based on the project itself? So how do we handle that multitude of proposals? And I'm going in a little bit in circles here. It's I'm thinking out loud, but I'm wondering if there's a way for us to organize it in such a way that we can respect the time of people who want to join the community, but are still finding their feet.
Yeah, thank you. So guys, any other person want to join the conversation? It's not only about this, there's a whole lot of stuff. It's just something that I had picked out and I was like, yeah, this is purely, I have to call Ken to this conversation because he's already having those conversations. All right. Okay, yeah, Jan.
I have my hand up for half an hour, so now I know what it is to be in that position. But I would like to comment on two things that Ken said, or the discussion. I think it's very interesting to think about voting results versus community expert results. And I looked it up, Ken. I saw that you had really good results from the community experts. Except for that Ruby Cathedral, but you tried that now 3 times or something, you probably should.
Yeah, no one wants to go out in the virtual world, I guess. That's it.
I don't know what it is, but
Maybe it's the decor. Maybe I need to go 70s or 90s. I'm not sure.
I was just kidding there, of course. But the other ones, which were much more significant, you had really good expert reviews. But you didn't win in voting. So what does that say? Now, and some people in the feedback say community experts are biased. Well, I would like to say this about this. I know the process of community experts. I know the people that did it. I know how we allocated people to projects. I know that we first had them do individual reviews and then put them together to discuss it all at once. So I have a pretty good feeling about this process. And it might not be perfect. No review will ever be perfect, but it has my vote of confidence. Whereas votes, in the end, and this should be properly analyzed, but I think there were something about 205 voters. But there were only 104 or 100, I don't know, 195, something like that. But there were something about 104 or so voters with AGIX. Think about that. We had 133 individual project proposers and only 105 actual valid voters. So what does that say about our community? And what does that say about how much value you should add to this public vote? I think we should do some deep thinking about what we want to accomplish and where do we want to add most value. If only so few people are voting, and probably, I've said that before the round, but now it's even worse, 90% or so, or maybe even 100%, I don't know, is somehow affiliated with the main projects that they're voting on. Yeah, how much value should you add to that? So if it would up to me, I understand that if you've not been, if you got a bad didn't got recommended, that you think this is biased or not, and maybe sometimes it was. But I would say 20% rule or even more, the majority of the expert recommendations were more or less accurate. Yeah, maybe small deviations, maybe one group voted a little bit different than the other group. So yeah, I think actually I put more value on the expert reviews than on the actual votes. And it's a pity that only 29% of the awarded proposals were actually recommended. And yeah, that should leave us to some deep thinking about how we want to move this forward. So for you, Ken, I would say you got approved by the most important group. That says something about the quality of your work as being reviewed by a very careful creative group of people and process. It's a pity that you weren't voted by the popular vote, but yeah, I wouldn't. Maybe I think as a general rule, I wouldn't mind. Just putting this out loud here. I'm not sure what Rafael thinks about this, but I wouldn't mind if anybody that got recommended in round 4 but wasn't awarded would be able to resubmit their proposal with any improvements, etc., in deep funding round 5. Normally, I would be against that. I mean, I don't want people to, like a Ruby Cathedral, for instance, having over and over again and seeing it coming back. But I think in such a situation, if you did get a recommendation but were not voted for, I think that you could make a case that it would be proper to allow that group of people to resubmit. So that's one thing. Another thing, and that's a smaller thing, you got me thinking a little bit about cultural projects. And we had that talk before, right? About how much categorization can you do? I mean, maybe I want to have something about sustainability and somebody else wants to have something about identity or whatever, or gender, or I don't know what. And so how big or small should you make these pools? But I thought about something differently, also in combination with these experts. So one way of thinking would be that we could say, well, maybe a percentage of the top-rated projects by the experts should be awarded just like that, like the top 5% or something, despite what any voter would say. Or a variation on that. Maybe we could have an ethical committee or something that could handpick each round one proposal or two or three, I don't know, or have a budget or whatever, and say we have a white card, a wild card, and we have the opportunity to award one or two or three projects specifically on the basis of that it's a cultural project or that it's an ethical project or a generally beneficial project, to counter indeed the fact that maybe only technical projects are awarded often. And that would be nice, right? And then we would have something else to showcase also from a branding perspective. And like you say, you can also, by having pools, you can build a community, but by doing something like this, and we don't even have to do that forever, but we could do that once or twice and see what happens, and if that would create more enthusiasm for those kind and awareness for those kind of projects. I think it would be a cool experiment. It's almost like a Dragon's Den.
Yeah, I think that would be beautiful. I think this speaks to what people in DFR5 needs to discuss. I think we want to see this kind of innovation coming out of the community based on this kind of feedback that we're getting, maybe something different. Or so that, like, let's see DFR5 come up unique and solve problems in very unique ways, while also not also causing a new form of problem, because there's this whole thing with the community. Yeah, Ken, you wanted to say something?
Oh no, I was being reflexive with my muting there. My apology.
All right, no problem. So yeah, I would like to hear what other people do think at this point. Clement, yes? You have the floor.
Yeah. So first, I had to immediately lower my hand because I have this culture of forgetting and keeping my hand after me, but I guess it's not going to do that today. So, I just wanted to say that can we, because a lot of persons have talked about biasness, transparency, and stuff like that. In reality, in practicality, can we totally eliminate bias from the whole process? Because I believe that everybody has some form of subconscious bias, right? Now, it may exist very subtle, but then when brought into action, it could have so much of consequences. For example, I can be keen on liking the color green, okay? And then I see a project whose logo has green color already, right? It may not make much sense, but then, I mean, it draws affinity to me already. And I might be tempted to, just because, I mean, you got a green color, I like this. And then, I mean, I could just give you good ratings just for that, right? Secondly, do people have wide knowledge base on every subject matter on every project that is being put into the ecosystem? I think no. That's the answer would be no. If I see a project on LLMs, for example, right? I may not know shit about LLMs, but I still got to vote on them, or I still got to talk about them, right? Now, do you think whatever comment I'll be giving, it's going to make so much sense in the grand scheme of things. So I think we have to come to terms with the fact that we got some very subconscious bias, and we should rather be seeking to, putting mechanisms that could put these biases in check. For example, maybe we could say, okay, let's allocate proposals to persons who are experts in certain places, right? Let's say people who have done a couple of RFPs. We can say, oh, you've done an RFP, come and do an expert review on this RFP. So I think the problem here should not be we centering on how to eliminate biases, because they would always exist. Even in Fontaine, we're going to have some form of biases, trust me, man. So, well, that's just what I have to say.
It was a good input, Clement. I have picking lately that these biases that members tells we can, and actually, as you mentioned it, they exist, right? We can't have 100% free of bias process. But getting the case you brought about the green color, if I go and assess a proposal that has the green in its logo, I will probably say a yes, right? But then we have Ubio that doesn't care about the green and prefers red. Now he is assessing the proposal, and he's not being biased by the color or his. And then we have Joanna, which prefers yellow, and it's not going to influence her vote or selection. So this over assessment, let's put it way, 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, which we did in the expert reviewers by having the individual assessments and then the group assessment. It's what I believe it's going to cheat a bit these biases, because we have a balance in what we are having as an outcome, the result of it, right? So we are balancing your bias, mine, Ubio, Joanna's bias into the volume, the amount of people that are doing this, or processes as well, okay? So we might have a lot of different ways of reviewing, and then in the average, we might have less bias. My opinion.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I have my hand up, Ubio. 100% agree. The only addition I would like to make is that when we talk about bias, we often mean that it shouldn't be a popularity contest, and it shouldn't be about who you know. It should be about what you know, basically. So I would like I would prefer all projects to be assessed based on their merit. That's hard for any regular person to do that, but I think it's easier for a dedicated, targeted, and maybe even trained group of community experts. I do acknowledge that there is something to knowing people. So as Ubio was saying before, if I know somebody, then I'm more inclined to vote for that person. But I would say that comes down to trust. Because I know you, I trust you. And if you're a complete stranger to me, I have less trust. So yeah, I think we can think about ways of building trust. And yeah, there was one person who argued last week for having dialogues in the review system. So having the team answer questions in real life or videotaped or whatever. I think that could also be such a thing that could create more trust. I mean, if I just see something on paper, I don't know who created or generated it. But if I see somebody who is confronted with questions and then at the spot is able to answer that questions in a meaningful way, yeah, that would build trust. And of course, if I know people, if I know their history, if I have been through something with them, yeah, you can't trump that. That will always, and that's okay as well. If we have that kind of community where people know each other, etc., and there's a buildup of trust, I think that's a kind of bias that's okay. Joanna.
Yeah, just on the topic of trust, I think in the proposal portal, it's already kind of you guys are already doing a good job because you can add the team members and then you can see each team's profile. I'm not entirely sure, and I can't remember now if you can see if they're part of previous proposals or not. But maybe an enhancement could be that you can, and I don't know if this is going to be, I mean, it is public information, but maybe you can add their like engagement score. And that way people could kind of understand their history of engagement within SNAT. We do calculate that score and we have it, so it would be just like a matter of adding it in a way that's intuitive from a UX perspective, but that could be like a midterm solution to kind of indicate, you know, old players versus new players. I don't know if that contributes to the bias, but it could be a way of, you know, for people to understand that someone's been engaging in deep funding for a while versus, or like actively contributing. Something to think about because we have the data, so it's just a matter of how we represent it.
Yeah, I think when you were telling this, you are already realizing that this would have a bias towards old people versus new members, and that we could also. I mean, I want to have more people, and I'm sure that there's a world out there of very intelligent, capable people, and I wouldn't want them to be downgraded because they're new just by that, but. Yeah, I was thinking, so we talked about that, I think also briefly about team reputation. So where you can somehow build a reputation by having more completed projects and maybe engage community members. So reputation score is definitely an ingredient, but it's also a very hairy, tricky topic to get it exactly right. And that will be a journey. But yeah, we have a foundation so we can build on that.
Yeah, and then on top, I think from the simulation project that Photrek's working on, there's some mitigating factors to this. I'm not entirely sure of the results now, but the concept of like quadratic voting where you're actually putting in some stake, and then that way it makes you really think about the proposals that you're voting for. I don't know the results, so I'm not going to talk about it too much now, but I'm sure in the next few weeks there'll be something that we can that they can discuss further there. So that would be an interesting conversation.
Very curious what kind of stake you have to put in there.
Like you actually pay for your votes, but I don't want to. I'm not too well versed on it yet. I'm still learning, so I'll keep it for the experts. But there is very interesting outputs from that study.
Well, since we are talking about reviews, should we be using AI for that? It's a possibility of having a review done by it as well, and not as the final review or scoring or rating assessment or whatever, but one of it. Well, now we have eligibility reviews, community reviews, expert reviews, AI review, LLM review, just to bring more of this sense that I mentioned about avoiding bias with different ways of assessing and giving different perspectives. Video reviews. One situation, and I mentioned it here with the videos, for instance, these interviews. We probably each of you know someone that was very clever, intelligent, and good in doing school or college, but in the exams, it was a boomer because the person can sometimes they don't have the emotional intelligence for this type of thing, right? And then we have really good people that will deliver a very prominent and interesting and important project being interviewed, and the person is freezing all the time when answering, and then nah, this guy I'm not going to put the vote in this guy here because I don't trust. This was kind of what took us into the decision of not releasing the negative recommendations or feedbacks from the expert reviewers, because we didn't want to burn the image of particular teams, and especially because they weren't notified before. So again, having different formats of assessments and potentially with the AI as well. Thoughts? One experiment that we can do is we can use our bank of proposals that we have, and using it can be even ChatGPT at this point, I believe, and try to do it and see the results. And then we can one by one say, okay, here makes sense, or not, right? And do some data analysis on the responses of the
I thought about this. We had there was somebody who proposed to me to have kind of proposal builder system, and I thought about we could have some AI review of the proposal in that process. So you're writing a proposal, and then the AI will already give feedback on your proposal, and then I could imagine. So I don't like all these AI generated reviews, but if we would have for every proposal one AI generated review at the moment that it is published. Yeah, might be.
So, on that, Raf.
Ubio? Oh no.
Well, I think that is what he got coming, because Clement was first with his hand up.
Okay, so yeah.
My question is, like, I really want to know what go get into this rap. Am I next? Sorry.
No, sorry, you were breaking up, Ubio, and we were I was making a little bit of fun of you because Clement had his hand up first, indeed, and then you were your video was breaking up.
I wasn't responsible for that, Jan. I was never responsible for that, please.
I'm not so sure.
He lost his trust in you, okay, Clement? No votes for you next time.
Okay, yeah. So I just wanted to respond to Rafael's conversation because I felt probably other people are bringing in new conversations to it. So yeah, what I wanted to say is my question is, like, we need to be able to establish like, before we get into another level of review or maybe AI review, which personally I think I'm neutral on that. I'm not for or against that. I'm seeing reasons for as well, tilting somehow towards it and against it, like it's just like that. But I think before I would want to go into that, I want to see let's establish the level of influence that all of this process is. Now, we've been able to identify the first level of it when we said 29% of the vote of the expert reviews got voted in. That's just the first level of it. Now, there's now the second level to that particular issue is how do people perceive projects that have been rated by experts, right? So even if they don't end up voting for it, obviously the votes can be due to a lot of other factors, right? I know you, or I just want to go in exactly to the ones people are not committed to voting a lot and all those other stuff. But before we even get to the whole voting process, if we can establish that the expert review is having a positive influence, I think that's another point where the research group needs to check. So there's the research on the outcome, but we need to also do a research on the perception, because if this somehow influences a positive perception towards people outlook on a certain project, then I would say that already has achieved its goal, and probably different levels of this kind of review then would already be positive and becomes necessary. So we now have community review, AI review, expert review, but now we are only talking about this on the assumption that it affects the perception. So the outcome, we said, yeah, the outcome is 30%, but outcomes and perceptions can be two things, because the motivation for the act of voting itself can be different from the motivation of perception. And if people do have positive perception of either the voters that the proposers or the proposal itself, then we can assume that that has already achieved its goal. And so, for example, that would mean if I do know that Ken had a 4.8 rating, how do I perceive, right? So we need to know how do people perceive generally, and then before we even talk about the second level of outcome. So that's what I'm trying to point in. It is when we are able to establish this level that we will now be able to talk about, do we need to now have more levels of these reviews in order to balance this perception? And then hopefully we'll be able to create a system that allows this perception to translate into the outcome. Yeah, Clement and Joanna, you can as well speak, sorry.
Yeah, well, I think for the majority of what you said, I'm quite in agreement to this. I just wanted to say as well that I like I'm huge on human reviews, you know, because for me, I know for once that AI is trained given specific specific limits, information, whatever the case may be. But humans, the subjectivity of human assessment is what makes the whole review process very interesting. Also, additionally, I just wanted to speak about people's perception about the projects. Now, I spent a lot of time on the portal looking at people's rating, and now somebody puts in a project as an RFP, and then a reviewer came and had the perception that that project was a new project. So the discussions, the acquisitions around the projects from the reviewer was from the point that that project was a new project, right? So I looked at the comments. Now I'm going to ask, let us assume that whoever made the proposal came and made a response to clarify that that was not a. But then the person who dropped the comments maybe accidentally didn't get to see that comment that explained that that project was actually an RFP. And then that person goes to the funding rounds or to the voting rounds and sees that same project having that perception that that project was wrongly positioned. Of course, do we think or don't we think that also is going to affect the person's voting on that particular proposal? I think Grace Dow, I think one of our proposals there, someone spoke to that proposal as a new project, but it was actually an RFP. And then for the majority of our comments, she spends time trying to explain to people that this project is not a new project, right? So does this have a way of influencing people going into the voting rounds? I think we should also try and hover around it as well.
Just to clarify, it was a community review or the expert review that is happening?
Community review.
I don't know if anyone wants to answer that, but like while we're discussing this, and Ubio asked a question, and it just made me think about the user experience a little bit. And I think Ubio's question was the correlation between, or like the influence between the reviews and the votes. And this just made me think of the user experience because there's the proposal portal where people are commenting, reviewing, and they're incentivized because they enhance their reputation that way. But by the time it's a voting time, we have a completely new portal. And I'm not sure exactly like how it's linked, but how many people are actually cross-referencing the two portals and the reviews on the one portal and then making a decision off of that, or just off of their memory, or just going in and voting based on like if they know the proposal or whatnot. So maybe we can enhance that somehow by interlinking the proposal portals, or somehow like on the voting portal for every proposal, putting in some information from the proposal portal. So like the total reviews or the expert, whatever we think is relevant. So then when you're actually voting, you have everything you need to make a vote, and you're not like actively trying to cross-reference between portals to remember how others voted, so just there's no discrepancy in the user experience because it happens at different times. And I'm just wondering, like, I know myself, I open both in different tabs and I cross-reference, but I'm wondering how many people actually do that, or if there's an easier way for them to be able to see everything they need when they're making the vote, if that actually helps with, or like it helps the experience of voting. So just a minor user experience thing we can enhance the UI with.
But what we did do this round for the first time is order the projects based on expert review in the voting portal. And we gave that information, and there's also the summary. I don't think we should replicate all the information on the portal in the voting portal. It would overwhelm people. You have 220 projects and all that information. You can't consume that as a human being. I think a better way, and in some future, probably not the next round, but sometimes, would be to integrate the voting portal. So do
into the proposal portal.
The voting portal in the proposal portal, in Deep Funding.
Yeah, exactly.
But of course, we're waiting for those insights of yours about voting, etc. And there may be some more fundamental changes to the voting system. And I don't know anything about the outcomes yet or whatever of that process. I only know there's a process going on. So it wouldn't make much sense right now to change the voting portal, knowing that maybe in the future we'll have more sophisticated changes on our hand. And then we can also have a better look at transparency and visualizing voting weight. And there's so much we can do in that area.
You know, when outcomes most times seem to be not to be reflecting what was assumed, the next thing that we usually go into is called system thinking. And I think that's what we're already having that conversation around, right? Because every system has an intuitive action or reaction that it brings out of certain people, right? So if we think about this now, if we leave the context discussion, the context thinking that we've been doing, and now enter into the system thinking, one of such that we are realizing is, which I love the introduction that Joanna is bringing in. Joanna is bringing in, is making us realize that the system, the way it is, has a capacity to make you have a positive perception about something and not necessarily be engaged enough to vote for it. So now that is on a system basis, right? So we need to now start a system discussion on how does this system, what does this system effuse out of people naturally? I think the system, the way it is right now, is a lot more independent. It makes people to be, it's not tilting people towards trying to collaborate and trying to retain anything. It's whatever you have in your head that you go into that system and deliver it. So we can say that the system, the way it is now, I mean, the system of the outcome, that's the voting process, does not, it's like there is a disconnect, right? Whereby everything has been done, and then we now get into the voting. It's like there's a gap, and then we now go into the voting. And because of that little gap that exists, it's possible that this the transferred knowledge may not necessarily happen. Remember, this is just a probable discussion that we are having. And like I said, for me, it's until we are able to get those clear line research that leaves the outcome and begin to even go into the into those other elements and then find out, okay, this is actually what is happening. Then we can now say, all right, so how are we losing all of this in transmission that people are not able to transmit all of this into this? So again, I think we are now beginning to enter into the system thinking how do we reorganize the system. And if we want to even go into the system thinking, we may even have to go in to even ask ourselves some deeper questions, which may alter a lot of things. Some of those questions could be, is it right for us to even be having voting after people have been able to, like, why do we have in 1 week, 2 weeks gap? Is this not, what is the effect that this is actually creating on the participants and all of this? Could this also have a correlation with the low turnout because there's that whole gap and all of that? So I'm not saying for or against. I'm just saying that when we begin to think about system, we will even start asking ourselves questions on even the positioning. Should we position A before B or position B before A? And what can these differences, these minute differences, cause out of the whole process? But yeah, it's nice we are beginning to have the conversation.
With all due respect, Ubio, I think conceptually what you say is completely right, but I believe we should not be overthinking this. If we know that we had 200 projects and only 100 voters, I mean, you can make the best system in the world, but if half of the population, if the population of the projects is twice as big as the population of the voters, then yeah, you already know that the voters vote for their own projects, and that has a huge impact on the total outcome. So most projects were voted by 20, 30 people only, voters. So how many of these 20, 30 were people that had some affiliation with the project, etc.? So I think what you're saying is valid. We should have system thinking. We should bring these things together, etc. But yeah, if we have, I mean, all statistics will break down with these low numbers.
The way I see, we have two main challenges if we want to at least keep the format that we have now, the framework that we have now, improve it, of course, but it's about quality. It's quality of the proposals that are being submitted and quality of voters or votes. That's the two main challenges, because we can have the best voters in the world, but if we have crappy proposals in the system, as Ubio mentioned it, what they are going to do, right? Downvote perhaps and less than 6.5, but nevertheless, we are not going to achieve our purpose with that. And also, if we have lousy voters or too few voters, then we are also having a problem, because even though we do have good proposals in this batch, they are not going to be selected. So yeah, it's something that we could also look through this perspective, these lenses, on how we are going to improve proposal quality. We are discussing these reviews, right? The way we should do it, which is a format of improving quality. But since I joined the program, I am thinking on how to increase the quality of voters and volume as well, right? If we have the volume and the quality, even better to do that. So that's something that I want to take to the work group to discuss as well. I guess we are already away from 1.5 hours, right? Anyone would like to make final statement or additional input quickly?
I won't submit a Ruby room for round 5.
Or you can revamp and make it better than any other proposal that Deep Funding
The Emerald Room.
Yeah, Emerald Room. Yeah. I would like to thank Ubio and the focus group for preparing the survey and preparing this meeting and this session and collecting this valuable feedback for us. We'll go over all the feedback, and then Rafael and me, and especially Rafael, will add that to the list of all the things that we can do and might improve in the project, both processes and also features on the platform. And we'll prioritize them and see which will make it to the next round and which ones may need to wait a little bit longer to the round after that one.
Okay, with that, I say goodbye to you all. Hopefully, you are going to join us next week again with the new town hall. And also, hopefully, we are going to have even more people attending for us to have these very good discussions as we had today. Really interesting topics and contributions from you all. Thank you very much, and see you next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Bye, guys.
Yeah.